Welcome to the Human Frequency. We're back in 2017. It's been an awesome 2016, despite what everybody in the media says. I think it's been a really great year in a lot of ways, and 2017 just promises to be even better. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yes, likewise. And I'm enjoying the weather, and I know there are a lot of people in California that are also enjoying the weather. Maybe some more than others. But
Some are not, by the way, with all the flooding and mudslides. We're going to get to that.
that's true, but that happens every winter.
That's true. I used to hear about that a lot when I was a kid. But I have also been enjoying the weather. Here in Southern California, it hasn't been as cataclysmic with all the rain coming in, although there have been some things going on. We will be getting into the drought and the rain coming up later in the show. I was out and about today, and it was very cold here in the mountains.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are you starting to thaw out?
I'm thawing, but I had my first pedicure in a very long time, and when you get a pedicure, you got to wear flip-flops to come home, otherwise you ruin it. And my feet were like numb when I got home, so I just took some time to warm them up. But while I was out getting my pedicure, I was privy to the sounds of rock and roll music of the past, and it was rotating between pretty much two bands, occasionally broken up by something like the Beach Boys. Can you imagine what those two bands were?
I'm going to guess Styx and Dire Straits.
Okay, thank goodness it wasn't Styx. Dire Straits, Money for Nothing, and The Chicks for Free is pretty catchy.
So you're saying that I was way off.
You were off. It was the Beatles and Led Zeppelin.
Well,
okay.
I mean, pick your poison there.
It's funny because I used to listen to both of those bands a lot in high school and junior high. I started getting into records when I was about 14 because I found an old record player in the garage. And I started going to the record store, and that was the time when the CDs were coming in and the records were phased out. So they were really, really cheap. And I amassed the collection. I got all the Beatles albums and all the Led Zeppelin albums. And now I don't know how I listened to all that back then, because I can't listen to either of those bands anymore.
Yeah, I would have to say, and, I don't think a lot of people know this about us, even though we talk about it from time to time, but we were musicians before we got into this work, and I guess technically we still are, but we know a fair bit about the subject. And for me specifically, when I was in my 20s doing jam sessions with various people, I pretty much only had two requirements to be in a band with someone. And one of my requirements is, and this is natural to being a keyboardist and playing with all these awful guitarists, is absolutely no songs in E. None.
No songs in E?
And I'm talking about E minor, too. I'm tired of these guitarists saying, oh, yeah, the song's in G, and then I turn around, and then it's 7.5 minutes of E minor.
Well, they are a relative major and minor.
I know, but that's what they say to get you ensnared, and then once you're in the song, then it's mostly E minors.
What's
and
wrong with
a couple
that?
of C's and a couple of G's, and I don't.
You don't like
overused. It's overused.
Overused.
It's overused, and to combat that, I play in A flat and C sharp a lot.
I don't think guitarists like A flat. They don't want to play bar chords.
That's exactly why I do it.
I
do it for the horn players. I do it for the horn players because they like these keys.
We are losing all the non-musicians right now.
I know, we've already lost them. There's crickets and tumbleweeds everywhere. But no, that was one of my prerequisites. And the second prerequisite is you must hate Led Zeppelin. It is, there's no room for negotiation here. There's no wiggle room. No, you must hate Led Zeppelin.
What about Dread Zeppelin?
That's different. If I'm going to be playing in a band, especially if I'm going to be playing in E all the time, it makes it a little better when there's a 350-pound Elvis impersonator sitting at the front going, so lonely, baby, I could die.
Oh, yeah, that's the stuff. Dread Zeppelin was one of those 90s bands. Led Zeppelin covers done by a big Elvis impersonator in a reggae style, right?
Something like that.
But anyway, I was listening to Led Zeppelin today, and I got to tell you, I was very, very amused because I haven't listened to them in a while. It's a band I hear when I'm out and about sometimes. They're very popular still. It really gets to me, though, when the bass line and the guitar line's the same. It's just kind of boring, and it just goes on and on and on like that. I never realized that Jimmy Page was not really such a good guitarist. I was always taught, oh, he's so great, he's so great. So when I was learning to play guitar, I learned Led Zeppelin songs. And I was listening today, he's doing that solo that goes, it's just him, okay? There's no other instruments going.
Oh, yeah, it drops out.
And it goes like this.
Oh, yeah. No, that's the one that's, I know the one you're talking about. It's the one that starts out with.
Is that the one we were just singing by Dred Zeppelin?
I think so.
Okay, and he's like, and it's like, it sounds just like he's a beginner guitarist. I never really realized that before, but I've been listening to some excellent guitar music lately that really puts it in perspective. So this excellent guitar music is by the Beavis Frond. I love this band. So unknown, so underrated. But look up, if you want to hear the most mellifluous guitar playing you've ever heard, type the Beavis Frond on YouTube and High in a Flat. Hear that beginning intro to that song.
That's Beavis spelled Bevis, by the way.
I'm going to put a link to that so you can go to it, or the name so you can type it up. But it is just beautiful, emotional guitar playing, and he rocks. He completely rocks. So guitar does not have to be just macho BS.
Wanking, I believe, is the official terminology, or noodling. I think
Noodling.
I've heard noodling used to describe it. So. In any case, that's
Nick Solomon of the Beavis Frond noodles a lot, but the noodling is very, very beautiful. And
it's tasteful, I've found.
And I love guitar, so guitar is actually my favorite instrument. Sorry, I know you're a keyboardist, but guitar is my favorite instrument in the rock band. But
me.
I was a bassist, and I play bass well, but I don't play guitar well, and I really appreciate great guitar music. I play keyboards too. Maybe I like it because I don't play it.
I appreciate good guitar music as much as I appreciate good bass work or great keyboard work or great drum work or xylophone work or any of those things. Whatever instrument it is, if it's good, then I don't listen to music for any reason other than that it's good. Not because someone else told me to like it, or this is what whoever recommends, or some magazine told me that this was good, so now I like it. That's completely missing the point.
Yeah.
And to go back to the Beatles for a second, that to me is music for people who don't listen to music.
I know what you mean about that. I just don't get it anymore. I used to listen to them. I just don't get it. I mean, it's sort of like, I guess it's like for someone who just has very few things in their record collection, they will have Beatles albums. It's sort of like the go-to music. And it's very well accepted, like Beethoven and Mozart. It's considered to be the highest caliber of rock music, the highest caliber of songwriting. Again, I say, listen to the Beavis Frond. I love this band so much. I cannot believe how amazing this band is. I only discovered them maybe about 4 years ago, and I'm just absolutely amazed every time I listen to them.
And for those of you saying, oh, you like the new music, it's no good. Let me tell you something. This guy is only about 10 years younger than the Beatles were.
I know, yeah.
So please reject that notion.
Yeah, I think he's of that same generation. He started playing out in the 60s, and his music is it's like garage music from the 60s, kind of combined with 80s underground and 90s alternative. It's just like a great mix of stuff. So I'd love more people to listen to Nick Solomon's music. I know he's well respected in the underground scene. Well, you know, what they call the underground scene, the indie scene. Like, I discovered him through Mary Lou Lord, who was a musician that I was following back in the 90s, and she covered a couple of his songs. And for some reason, I never really pursued, I knew they weren't by her, and I never really looked up who wrote them, but they were a couple of my favorite of her songs. I finally looked it into, and I'm like, oh, she picked out this music because this guy is a genius. And so he's been covered by Mary Lou Lord, which is how he got to be a little more well-known in that indie scene. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't understand people's taste in music out there. They're just not really looking beyond what's given out by the mainstream radio.
Yep.
Just like everything else.
Time to move on and time to grow up. That's what I say.
And there isn't a hell of a lot of new stuff going on in music, but it's really not the time for music. We've got bigger fish to fry right now, which is why I'm not playing music these days. One of the conversations I was overhearing, a couple of conversations I was overhearing in the salon where I got my pedicure, were both about President Trump. And we live in Trump County here. This is Kern County. This is Trump country.
That's for sure.
And I think that he was very much supported here. Los Angeles, that's Clinton territory. You know, liberals, conservatives, it's the red and the blue, Democrat, Republican division of California. So one of the comments I heard regarding Trump, which kind of amused me, was this lady who was having her hair styled said, "Do you think that Meryl Streep went over the line?" She was referring to Meryl Streep's speech at the Golden Globe Awards. And did you catch that speech, Gabe?
What do you think? I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count.
Well, you didn't, but you saw it on YouTube, right?
I saw parts of it, and after the fact, because pop culture and me are just, it's like a north magnet and a north magnet. It's just instant repelling.
Okay, well, you might have caught part of it when I was listening to it, and I thought it was just a bunch of drama, quite honestly. Now, Meryl Streep, by the way, tranny city, okay? I have to say it.
Really?
Meryl Streep. You know that is not a woman standing there.
Well, you know, some are more obvious than others. Like you look at Michael Obama.
Well, that one everybody knows.
But that's obvious.
Look, some girls are bigger than others.
Yeah, that's
and
we talked about the Smiths on a different show.
And Meryl Streep seems like a pretty big lady, but it's the body shape, it's the face shape, and I've been looking into this, and I'm not obsessed with transsexuals by any means, but I was seeing somebody there that I had never noticed before, because I've seen her in movies, and I never even thought twice about it. But I'm starting to hear about more and more people who are transgender, and I thought, yeah, Meryl is pretty transgender looking. And she was saying some stuff about Trump, that he was, I think, misusing his power and being abusive. And I don't really even know what the drama is about. It's always just some kind of superficial comment that Trump makes.
Yeah,
and
always
there's
is.
so much drama around Trump. So last time we were talking about how would the global elite allow someone into office who is a climate change denier? How would they allow that to happen? And I was confused, and I think we figured it out.
Yep, we got it. We've got the answer.
Well, please discuss.
Well, the answer is actually very simple. Because things like war are now obsolete. They can't be used to control people and create diversions and divide the people. They have to resort to other measures. And I think this is like their latest thing that they've got fresh from the drawing board. Is that here's this belligerent, offensive guy who just goes around spouting whatever the first thing that comes into his head is, and that is naturally going to elicit whatever PC, politically correct.
It's all about
emotions,
the PC agenda.
Yes, whatever those emotions are, they may be strong in people, they may be more dormant, and anything in between, but they are there to bring out what's there in people, and that is the diversion.
Yeah,
that is the diversion. Is the drama that comes from him saying whatever he's saying at any particular moment.
Well, it really cracked me up that his reply to Meryl Streep on his Twitter was that she was overrated, which was very funny to me. But again, it's just distraction and drama. I'm not really a Golden Globes watcher. I checked it out on YouTube because I'm keeping up on some certain news right now regarding the underbelly of Hollywood. So I'm kind of doing a little research there. I was very amused by Jimmy Fallon's major fail with a teleprompter. I don't need a teleprompter to tell me what to do. That was pretty funny.
Well, for people who are a little lacking in the talent department, I guess I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The guy's a complete doofus, pretty much. And
yeah, he is.
You can tell just by looking at him. But yeah, if your teleprompter goes out, you got to at least have a backup plan ready.
Well, I don't think he expected that to happen. But back to what you said about the PC thing. I actually am a victim of it myself. We're all very well programmed, and I'm so programmed in the PC that I'm still calling transgender by the gender that they identify as, because that's how I've been taught. So I call Meryl Streep she. Now, this is provided that she is actually a transgender. I don't know, maybe she is a woman, but from everything I've been learning lately, I don't think so. But I'm still very PC, in my training, so it's hard for me to break that. But the veils are definitely lifting, and in 2017, we're going to see a major shattering of the illusion. I am sure that is the next big thing, that more and more people, even those who are not thinking about conspiracy theories or noticing chemtrails or any of these things, this is all going to break down. The programming is breaking down in 2017.
Yeah, you're right. And then the thing I like is that it's especially weak right now. If they have to resort to these these very, very weak, insignificant surface arguments to try and distract people, if that's the best they have, then things are actually shaping up to be really good.
Well, it's going to be really interesting this year. We've got some of the veils are lifting, of course. We've got more and more of the transgender agenda coming out, which we will be covering more in the future. I've kind of steered away from it because I don't want to offend. Obviously, I've known transgender people in my life. I've known people of all shapes and sizes and walks of life and opinions and, different programs. I've known all kinds of people, and I don't really judge people if they're transgender. I've always just kind of considered that their business. But I will be covering this more in the future. There is an agenda from the elite regarding this, and it has nothing to do with human rights.
That's correct. And I'd like to call to mind an anonymous quote that I saw some time ago, something along the lines, let's see if I can do it without butchering it, but I think the quote goes something like, "This world is a wonderful, magical place full of many excellent things and a whole lot of people waiting to be offended by something."
Exactly.
And that's all the world is. So you shouldn't worry about offending people because we're dealing with a deprogramming. And the reason that programming is so effective is because it takes a lot to undo it. And it's a painful process. For some, it's more painful than others.
It's extremely painful.
It sometimes takes some really jarring information to just kind of shake people out of their stupor. And perhaps for some people, this will be one of those things that just gets their attention and they say, "Oh, wow, I've been lied to about this. What else have I been lied to about that?" And then they'll just go on to the next thing and the next thing after that. And then it'll collapse like a house of cards at that point. But the drought propaganda, I think, is a very big one because it's been raining so much in California and snowing in the mountains, but there's been so much precipitation that the mainstream media can't lie about the drought anymore. Like, they literally can't.
They had a water scarcity agenda for a long time, geoengineering us till we had no rain. And since 2011, they've been really hammering us with the chemtrailing and the geoengineering. And it's energetic warfare against us is what it is. So the heavy metals up there, that's part of it. Okay, and that a lot of people have noticed the chemtrails more every day. And in fact, I'm amazed by how many people out there in the world that I would be afraid to even mention it to me. So that's pretty cool that people are noticing. Since 2011, it's been really bad with the drought situation. We started making orgonite in April of 2014, and we started noticing a difference immediately. There was an increase in precipitation, but of course these things take time, and it wasn't an immediate deluge or anything like that. I mean, you have to build this up, and by this point, especially after the takedown of the Northwest Frequency Fence in November by Gabriel and myself, we distributed 500 tower busters in Oregon along the coast, in Portland, very much in depth in Portland, and in Northern California in areas we hadn't hit yet. And we actually have a continuous Oregon energy fence, I should say, not exactly a fence, but a line of defense against the frequency fence from Cannon Beach, Oregon, all the way down to LA. Of course, we have a lot more to do.
A fortress, if you will.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. And ever since we did that, the floodgates opened and the rains just came in like we've never seen in our lives.
Literally, the floodgates opened.
So things have changed a lot, but it took us a couple of years to get there. By this point, we've distributed 4,000 tower busters by our estimation in California and Oregon. And that's a lot of orgonite tower busters. I mean, that's not something you could accomplish overnight. So the precipitation in 2014 was still low, according to media reports, according to the National Weather Service. And, we just took it with a grain of salt. We saw what was changing. In December of 2014, DeWin Gardner, otherwise known as Orgonite Austin, posted a video on YouTube saying he had noticed the increase in precipitation in California. And he said, someone's doing something there. Something's happening with orgonite in California. He didn't know it was us, but it was us largely. There's others, but we had been going hog wild by that point.
The title of that video was very portentous, and that was Orgone Threshold Has Been Reached. And that means a lot because there are so many sources of what Wilhelm Reich called DOR, or deadly orgone radiation, and that's what is emitted by specifically the cell phone tower array. And that's our work, and you can check our website for more information on this, is that we go around wherever these cell phone towers are, and there are many of them. There are quite a lot, and it takes a long time and a very thorough job to go around neutralizing all of these sources, because those are emitting the very frequencies that were causing the drought in the first place.
Right. So to make that clearer, it's not the chemtrails alone that cause drought.
That's right.
They go hand in hand with the electromagnetic fields of the towers. It's not just HAARP. It's HAARP in your town. It's the cell tower arrays in your town. That is mind control in your town. That is weather control in your town. So the thing to do is to neutralize them, and that's what we do with tower busters, and more people every day are doing this. I hear more and more people making them, and they get them from us too, from our online shop. And it's a really beautiful thing that's going on with the distribution of orgonite.
That's right. And there are a lot of people emailing us, thanking us, because they know what our work entails, and what's been going on in California is in direct correlation with that. So thank you to all of those people who've emailed us. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and thank you also to the Californians and people everywhere all over the world that have been distributing orgonite, because I've seen the pictures worldwide of beautiful skies, nice clouds, and a great decrease in chemtrails all over the world in the past 2 years. Now, it has taken us 2.5 years to get to this point where we are right now with these torrential snows and rains coming into California. And I really believe that it will not always be this crazy on the precipitation. I think what's going on is a rebalancing. The rivers, the lakes, the reservoirs need to refill. Mother Nature knows this, and she's taking care of it. I don't necessarily think we're going to have crazy weather forever. I think we're just rebalancing and coming back to where we need to be, since we've had this engineered drought for so long. But it has taken a while, and this year it cannot be denied. Now, last year, meteorologists called it El Nino. They call it El Nino every time it rains a lot in Southern California, because they cannot admit that rain is natural here in the winter and spring, which anyone who has grown up in Southern California knows that rain is natural in the winter and spring, and that's when we get our rain, and that's when everything regreens. Last year, they said it was El Nino causing it. And
what's their latest term for this year?
This year, it's atmospheric rivers, and atmospheric rivers is something I've never heard in meteorology, and I assure you that Wilhelm Reich and his team would think this was a bunch of nonsense. Now, I've been studying the core volumes that were published in the early 50s, and I've been reading up on the primary and secondary functions of weather. And Wilhelm Reich is not the only writer on these. He's got experts from different universities. And I wrote an article about this on my blog, thekembo.tumblr.com, which you can check out. It's a recent article from a few days ago. One of his teammates there was writing an article about the primary functions of weather. And this man was a meteorologist with the U.S. Air Force. So these are not underground people. These aren't, crazies and wackos. These are people who are, in the field of meteorology, working for the Air Force, or having been trained in universities. Mm-hmm. And what we've been looking at weather from the secondary functions, and that is humidity, pressure, and
warm fronts, cold fronts,
exactly,
things of that sort.
And what he said was that these are secondary characteristics of weather and not suitable for forecasting weather, but good for describing weather. But the primary characteristics are energetic, the energetic properties of the atmosphere. And we are definitely finding that in our work, because every time we disable a number of sources of DOR, which is deadly orgone radiation, which come from cell towers, we see immediate changes. We see the chemtrails clear, the air become clean, and we see rain. I mean, a lot of the time it rains while we're tower busting. So
clouds rolling in, and then the precipitation starts. And we've seen this in a variety of different climates, as we've said before.
Yeah, so Wilhelm Reich and his team were absolutely correct about this. And they were doing work so similar to ours, because we're basically taking the next step. We're taking his work and bringing it into the current day in a way that anyone can do. You don't have to be a scientist to do what we do. But the meteorologists now are calling this atmospheric rivers. They're saying there's rivers of moisture, of rain in the sky. It just doesn't work that way, people. That's just their excuse for why we're getting so much at once. But the way that the rain falls is that when you have a negatively charged atmosphere, the hydrogen bond forms out of the humidity. You'll have water molecules bonding together, forming clouds. Now, why does meteorology not cover this? Why do they not talk about the energetic characteristics and how it actually happens? Is to cover up the weather modification that's been going on for so long.
Thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, we're not just talking about now. We're talking about over a long period of time. It's an extraterrestrial agenda. And here on Earth, there are definitely humans participating in this. It appears that there are a lot of Air Force and military planes involved. However, I would have to argue the technology they're using may not be from this Earth, because I have seen those planes disappear and change shapes before my eyes.
Long before there were chemtrails, long before there were planes, there were these sources of toxic energy, and it's been going on a lot longer than people think. And yeah, that's just one element to the mainstream media cover-up. The other thing that they're doing is they are, in typical form, they are emphasizing the floods and the torrents and the landslides, mudslides, roads getting washed away, cars falling into ditches and rivers. They will naturally emphasize those bad things.
Well, it is happening.
It is, but the point I'm trying to make is that this happens every winter. Well, at least every winter that there is not an engineered drought.
Well, let's look at the landscape of California. Now, today, a 9,000-pound slab of concrete slid off a house in the Hollywood Hills. And this has been there have been a lot of mudslides, and there's been a lot of damage from these rains, because this is the most we've seen in a long, long time. No, these things are really happening, but let's look at the landscape of California. Does it make sense to build these stilt houses in the Hollywood Hills? It doesn't make sense to me. I wouldn't live in an environment like that. We've got dirt piles everywhere. If you listen to the No Forests on Earth episode, or checked out the video There Are No Forests on Earth, you'll find that a lot of the landscape we see around us has been terraformed by who? We don't know, but long ago our landscape has been changed. And here in California, we have rolling hills everywhere. Well, I've started to see what these rolling hills really are, just like I started to see what Merle Streep really was. And these hills are not natural hills. These are dirt piles. Some of them really look like dirt piles.
Well, they sometimes help us with that analogy by piling up man-made dirt next to it. Obviously much smaller, like maybe 20-foot piles.
Well,
but
yeah, if you see a man-made dirt pile off the side of the freeway and then look behind it at the hill behind it, you might see that they look very similar. So we've got these big dirt piles all over Southern California, and we build our houses on them. Not a very good idea.
Nope.
You got to find stable ground to build, but naturally, I'm not being callous, but during this time of year, this does happen. In my childhood, growing up in LA, we always saw houses falling off of hillsides. I was actually visiting a friend of mine when I was about 9 or 10 years old in Pacific Palisades, and we took a walk in the neighborhood, and the house across the street from her was abandoned, and half of it was off the hill already. It was going to fall over, and so they couldn't live in it anymore. This is just what happens when you build in such a precarious position. So that did happen today, though. Houses are sliding off the hillsides. We are having unbelievable precipitation. Here's a few statistics on that.
And mind you, these are mainstream media statistics, so they're naturally going to underplay what it actually is.
Well, whether it's underplayed or not, this is pretty phenomenal. Ski resorts are actually closing because there's too much snow. And at elevations above 7,000 feet, at elevations about 7,000 feet, they had about 5 to 10 feet of snow in the Truckee and Lake Tahoe areas. This is according to USA Today. And according to Breitbart, this is the wettest winter in decades in California. And here's a quote. This really made me laugh. California's crippling 5-year drought came to a temporary halt in the northern part of the state. And I had to laugh because how do they know it's a temporary halt? How do they know it's not a halt?
Maybe they're praying. Maybe they're crossing their fingers behind their back. Please let it not last too long.
Well, it's just made me laugh that they use the words temporary halt.
Yeah.
But the fact is, 350 billion gallons of water have replenished California's reservoirs. And, there are a lot of problems associated with this rain, but really this rain is a blessing on our state. And I've been getting thank you emails too, which is so heartwarming, because I don't distribute Organite expecting anyone to think that it's doing anything. This is definitely not work you're doing to get thanked, because it seems too crazy.
Well, we just do it because it's the right thing to do. We do it not for any type of recognition. We do it because we've seen observable results of what it does. We've seen the research that Wilhelm Reich did, and we've seen what happens when you apply it in modern times. It's astounding. It's the only thing we can do.
Well, I know the drought is over, but according to the state of California, it's not, because back in January of 2014, so that's 3 years ago now, Governor Brown signed an emergency drought declaration. So in order for the drought to be officially over, according to the state of California, Governor Brown must rescind the drought declaration. And he's actually very unlikely to do this, even though we've had these record rainfalls. He's unlikely because there are parts of the state that are supposedly still having low water levels and are short of rain. One of these areas is Santa Barbara. The funny thing about this is I literally just got an email from somebody in Santa Barbara yesterday saying that the rivers are full, the streams are full again, and the hillsides are green again, and they've been getting tons of rain. So I'm wondering, why is Santa Barbara being declared one of the areas that's still drought-stricken in the state? I don't know where they're getting their statistics from, because the residents of Santa Barbara are seeing beautiful rainfall, and the water levels increasing again.
I know where they're getting their statistics from. I don't want to utter any profanity on the air, though.
All right. Doesn't have anything to do with Meryl Streep?
Well, I don't know about that. I'll get back to you on that one.
Well, here's the real deal, okay? The San Luis Reservoir has risen 134 feet since August. That's an increase from 10% full to 66% full. It's now more than half full, so even the pessimists would have to see it as getting fuller.
You mean it's less than half empty?
It's less than half empty, exactly. So even the pessimistic mainstream media would have to recognize this. And reports of Laguna Lake and San Luis Obispo are that it is now overflowing, and it had been completely dry before. Mm-hmm. And we had a guest on our show, John Robson, a San Luis Obispo resident, chembuster manufacturer, and Organite gifter. And he and his fiancee gifted Laguna Lake back when it was empty, and after they gifted the Organite around the lake, it filled up again, which is a beautiful, wonderful, and inspiring story. Now it's overflowing from rain.
And there are a couple others. I know Folsom Lake, they had to, for the first time in years, let water out from the dam because it was full. Mm-hmm. So this is happening all over the place. These are not just isolated incidents, but this is happening statewide and probably beyond the state too. I know
it is
the whole
happening
coast
beyond the state. It
is getting lots of precipitation.
Mm-hmm. And in Nevada too, they're having to close ski resorts because there's too much snow. I've been watching the rain maps. It's unbelievable what's happening in the western U.S. right now.
That's right. So if you're getting your news still from these media sources, just be aware they're lying to you. At the very least, they are slanting information to suit them and to suit their agendas. So please come to thekembo.com to find out what's really going on.
Well, they're not lying about everything now because they can't. And that's what's so great about this is they're actually not lying so much about the rain anymore. What they're doing is they're slanting it in a negative direction. Mm-hmm. But at this point, they can't cover up the fact that it's raining because the hillsides are green like an emerald in Los Angeles. The hillsides are so green. I have seen green hillsides in LA in the normal springs and winters, but never like this. This is just beautiful. So they can't hide it anymore. And the rivers are full. I see it with my own eyes. They can't hide it. And even the university experts are admitting that it is over for the drought. Jay Lund, a professor of engineering and director of the Center for Watershed Sciences at UC Davis, has said, and I quote, "We certainly don't have a statewide drought right now."
Wow. That's big of them to actually admit that. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that guy's funding will be cut.
How can they hide it anymore? Well, one of the things that happened as a result of all these rains was that a giant tree fell in the forest. This was one of the ancient sequoia trees.
But was anyone around to hear it?
And they said it didn't make a sound, right?
That's true.
They said it fell without a sound. And I wonder who would be even in the sequoia forest when it's pouring rain on a freezing cold day.
A complete lunatic?
But did he hear the tree fall?
I don't know. A complete deaf lunatic. Okay, maybe not. Anyhow, this tree was about, they're estimating 1,000 years old, somewhere between 1 and 2,000, I think was their estimate. It was called the Pioneer Cabin Tree, also known as the Tunnel Tree, and it's in the Calaveras Big Tree Forest in northern central California, somewhere between Sacramento and Tahoe, I think. And this tree, it was battered for years by all kinds of nature, lightning strikes, forest fires, you name it. It got topped a little bit, but it was still
Topped a little bit?
Yeah, it was still about 300 feet tall and maybe 30 some feet wide. But this tree had been around a long time, and in the middle of the 19th century, it started to become. There was a lot of tourism starting to move through the area. Hotels, civilization was being set up, and in the 1870s, it was actually through the trunk of this tree was actually carved out for tourism purposes, so that people could walk through it. It was the most inane thing on the planet, but this was done, and obviously this considerably weakened the structure of the tree that had already been weakened from centuries of just being in nature.
Topping a tree kills it, by the way.
That's true.
Yeah.
So the tunnel weakens the tree. On January 8th, during a big storm that came through, where they received several inches of rain, this tree collapsed in the rainstorm. It just, the downpour soaked the soil up to the point where the tree roots just couldn't hold it up anymore, and it just fell right over and shattered. So this tree is dead. And I know a lot of the big story about this tree specifically is not even that it fell, but all of the tourists. I'm trying not to be judgmental here, but I will just say tourists. All the tourists that go through there can't take their picture anymore. The tunnel's gone. They can't have their children taking the pictures that they took years ago. It's pathetic. And it's so sad that this respectable life form be degraded in this way. Not just the cutting out of the tree, but the worthless humans that flock to it every year just to have their picture taken and in a destroyed part of it.
It's sad. But when you say worthless humans, that makes me sad too, because it sounds like the New World Order.
Well, I don't mean to sound like the New World Odor. So I'll take that one back for now, but it is a pretty low action in my opinion to do that. And that's not the only tree that exists like that in California. There are a couple others. I think
General Sherman.
I think there's one in Yosemite. Yes, there's General Sherman too. But there are many that undergo just this thoughtless action. And I do think that rather than being bummed out by the news of this tree falling over and dying, I think there's a bright side to it.
Well, I found it very meaningful when the tree fell, because we have been looking into the ancient trees that were much, much bigger than today's trees, that were the ancestors of the sequoias, that were all destroyed. And we've been seeing the stumps in California. We saw them in Oregon. I've seen pictures of them all over the world. This is in the film, There Are No Forests on Earth. You can learn all about this. He's not saying that we don't have trees. What he's saying is that the big forests of the past are gone. And we really did have trees on this planet that were so immense that you couldn't really believe it.
Right. And what he's saying by that title is the forests that we do have that we call forests are so puny and just rather pathetic compared to what used to exist all over the world.
And Devil's Tower is the most famous example of that, probably. It's the most obvious example, but there's so many of these giant stumps all over the earth. And funny thing is, I looked at a discussion board recently that talked about Devil's Tower, and people were saying, oh, no, that's not a tree stump. That's not a tree stump. And this was from a couple of years ago that someone came up with the idea that maybe Devil's Tower was a tree stump. This was from early 2015. This is before the film came out, There Are No Forests on Earth. And it was amazing that someone else saw it too, and then now I look at it and I'm like, how did I not notice that these were all stumps? They're all over the place.
Well, it changes your perspective.
Yeah. But the fact that this giant tree fell, I find it meaningful because I feel that the tree is now out of its misery. And this tree has been so abused. These giant sequoias are such a treasure that we should honor. And we have definitely not done that as humans. It's very, very sad.
Quite the opposite in this instance.
I am very thankful that that tree's life is now ended so that it can go to a better place. I really feel that the trees have spirits in them. I used to not understand that plants had that kind of life to them, but I know now, living in a forest here in the mountains, that the trees definitely have some kind of consciousness. Mm-hmm. They might not be like us, but there's a consciousness there. And to be topped and have a tunnel through your core, it's like drilling a hole through your body, what they did to that tree. Mm-hmm. I find it meaningful. I think it's a way that we can move on and start to heal from the destruction of our forests, both the giant trees of old and the current forests that are being destroyed. I think this is a healing moment for Earth. And it was the orgone energy rush that created the storms that allowed this tree to finally die and move on. So,
well, nature created the storms, but it was the orgone rush that neutralized the many arrays that would previously disable those rains and prevent them from coming into the state. But now that those have been neutralized, what's natural can come through. And that's one of the pieces of misinformation about orgone energy, is that cloud busting can be harmful and dangerous.
Well, it can be.
And that's true, but we are not cloud busting. We are tower busting. And there's a big difference.
Yeah.
The difference is we are working with devices that are not harmful in any fashion. Unless you hit someone, when you're throwing a piece from a moving car. Then it's harmful. But placing it, there is no danger to doing it. Mm-hmm. It is only to neutralize the sources of toxic energy that are suppressing the rain in the first place.
Cloud busting itself can be dangerous.
Yes.
Because Wilhelm Reich and his team were really doing major, major weather control with those devices, which we don't do today. But what even Wilhelm Reich said that in cloud busting, and he said in cloud engineering, we do not create rain and we do not destroy clouds. We assist God in the natural process. So
that's right.
His idea behind it, he wasn't doing the cloud busting and the cloud engineering to play God. He was doing it to help people. He was doing it to end drought, to clean the dirty atmosphere, the DOR, the so-called smog. He was doing it to relieve the suffering of children and in cities, and to bring rain to farmers in places where there was drought. And he and his team even diverted a hurricane that was headed straight for New York City in the mid-50s. They diverted it off the coast and it didn't hit New York. And I read the play-by-play account of this in the core volumes. The mainstream media, all the radio stations, had no idea what they were doing. They could not understand what had happened to this storm. But that was the idea, was to prevent catastrophe and to end drought and to clean the air. So yes, we are assisting the natural process, mm-hmm. and we are having an impact on it, but the idea is not to play God.
Right. Tower busting is, quite simply, georestoration. Tower busting is the reestablishing of normal weather patterns which are normal, which in some cases may not be perceived as normal because they've been abnormal for so long.
We might see completely new weather in California. It doesn't mean it's fake, doesn't mean it's unnatural. So don't fear the cloud. Just watch the sky, see it happen, be a part of the change, because this is the year where everything changes. The veils are lifting in 2017. We've got all this new information. It's totally life-shattering. It's life-changing. Many people do not want to change. They do not want to come with us. Just let them stay, even if they're your family or friends. I know it's tough. Believe me, I've tried to explain things to my family, and it doesn't go very far. We are moving on into a new and better place. So I think 2017 bodes well. I'm not afraid of Trump. I'm not afraid of war. I'm not afraid of economic collapse or environmental destruction. I'm not afraid of anything.
Because the solutions to these things are always here. The solutions are always here. On this planet, anytime you hear about shortages or austerity measures, BS. It's never true. There is an abundance of anything and everything that we need on this planet, always, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
We just need to walk in the path of God and to do His will. And as long as you're doing the right thing, and that's what that means to do God's will. God's not a guy in the sky. God is the universal life force energy. And this is a universal truth. It exists everywhere. It's in us. It's in everything. Likewise, yes, there is evil everywhere. But as long as you do the right thing and live a good life, you will find that good things happen to you.
And hey, we're not saying it's easy. We're not saying that by any stretch. We go through very difficult times. Believe me, we go through extreme difficulty trying to do this work. When we do it, we are very drained, and we have to do a lot to be effective planetary healers. And I think it's safe to say that the one thing we do that helps accomplish that the most is to not have toxic devices like smartphones and smart meters and Wi-Fi routers in our own homes.
I know. I like having a clean home like that, clean energy. I know most people don't have that, but we're not going to stop hammering that point in anytime soon.
No.
Let's get control back over our minds. It's 2017, and our minds are what is going to change this world and bring it into the new paradigm.
It's
and it's
time.
here now.
Yep.
All right.
It's the time.
It's time. 4 years after the 2012, whatever you want to call it, revolution, elevation, ascension.
Awakening.
Yeah.
Whatever term you want to apply to it. This point gets overlooked a lot. You have to clean up your life. The old you has to die before the new you can be reborn. And this has no religious connotation to it. I'm speaking from a very pragmatic, a very practical standpoint here, is that you must change in your heart and your mind before the world around you can change, because what goes on inside you directly manifests in a quantum field. And I know I'm repeating this for the umpteenth time. We say this on every show.
Well, thank you so much for listening to the Human Frequency's first episode of 2017. We're very excited to bring you a lot more great content this year, and shorter format, easier to listen to, and pictures too.
That's right. So please continue to check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thehumanfrequency. Check out Sharon's blog to find out more updates as they come in about the weather war in real time, and our Etsy store, which is thescalarvortex.etsy.com. All of these links are available on the website, thekembo.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.